Thank you. Great to be here. Nice to see you all. So I got invited to a party today. Yes. Well, I wasn't. All my friends were. And they had a good time and I wasn't invited. So how would you feel if that was you? Would you be forgiving and say, well, maybe they just forgot about me. Next time it'll be all right. Or would you say, there's people out there, better people to spend my time with? Well, let's see what happens when we don't have access to something that other people do. It's unequal, isn't it? It feels like there's an imbalance there, then people can miss out. And a lot can happen when you don't have access. Think of a person who can't pay a bill because they can't access a service they need to in order to do that. Let's think about somebody who's cut off from their friends or family because they're not able to access a social network that their friends do. So there's a lot of things that can happen because a person doesn't have access. And that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Accessibility. So we're going to just look at three things, and a little bit is covered by what Jam already said, but just to recap on that, we're going to cover this. What is accessibility? How it involves us, you and me, as JavaScript developers today, and what we can do. We've already had some very good practical points, but some other things that we can perhaps act on today. So we're just going to look at that first point first. What is accessibility? Well, teaching is to show things by contrast, isn't it? Something that we say it's not like this, but it is like that, right? So what we're going to do is look at accessibility through that lens a minute here. So this is what accessibility is not. It is not. This website is 100% accessible. If we're doing that, then that's fantastic. That is a major step, and it shows that we really care. But it's not just a tick list of things we can do and can't do. And some people say, well, why bother? If we can't have a 100% accessible website, well, why try in the first place? Well, we could say in reply to that, well, you can't have a 100% secure website, can you? Well, you can. It's just you can't actually publish it on the web. So but we don't stop trying to do that, do we? We always try to make our sites secure as possible because we know that our users need that security. We know that we'd be letting people down if it's not as secure as it can be. And it's the same with accessibility, I feel, that we still try our best to reach that 100% mark. It is not something that we can tick off and say we've done it. Unfortunately, it's not like that. It's a bit more complex. But we still want to try, don't we? We still want to try our best to do that. And another thing that I've heard is that we don't need to build for accessibility because statistically so few people use screen readers that we don't need to build for them. But that doesn't really hold water. We're not talking about whether or not people can use our site. We're talking about whether they have access to something. For instance, we might use that reasoning when we think about IE6. We don't support IE6, right? But those people who use IE6 have a choice, or the companies that employ them have a choice. But people who need different accessibility tools or need an accessible website, they don't have the choice, do they? That's what they're given. That's what they have. And so a range of abilities of people, a different spectrum of humankind with different abilities and needs is a fact. And so we should include them as well. But what is accessibility then? We looked at what it's not. What is it in contrast to that? I really like this quote. It was quoted in an article by Ethan Marcotte, who published just earlier this week. And he quotes Liz Jackson, who said, it's an opportunity. I really like that framing, don't you? An opportunity to engage people. Who doesn't want to talk to the people that use our services and our apps? Who doesn't want to find out what they think, how they use it, what they need from it? How can we improve it? How can we make it better? It's an opportunity to learn from these people so that we can benefit them. Because remember, as Jam said, when we build accessible sites, we're not just building for one set of needs, we're building for all, right? And we're expanding the scope of our apps, our services, to reach more people. Who doesn't want that? It's a great opportunity. I just want to tackle something that I've heard recently in my Twitter feed. Twitter, it's great for arguing, isn't it? But I've heard that JavaScript developers often get pulled up on this and say, we're not great at accessibility. We don't focus on it. We're not that good at it. And I don't think that's quite true. I think there's so much that we've got to think about. Type safety, tests, Even our CI tools fall to us as JavaScript developers these days, don't they? Loads of things to think about. But we also need to think about accessibility as well. For example, if we wouldn't ship with a poor test coverage, if we wouldn't assign any to all of our variables, we'd experience a crash in our application. We don't want to do that, do we? We don't want to let our teams down. We don't want to let our companies down, and we don't want to let our users down. But we also don't want to let other users down. We don't want to let down other customers by not making sites accessible for them as well. So what isn't accessibility? It's not a checklist, but it's an opportunity. We can engage our users. We can really benefit from their view of what we have built and help them and help ourselves as well and help our organizations that we work for. So we've seen what accessibility is. Now let's see how we are involved. I came across this quote the other day: any society is judged on the basis of how it treats its weakest members. How are we doing on that? Now, I do have issue with this word weakest. I don't think that people with accessibility needs are weak, but they have different situations to us, different circumstances in life. Maybe they feel marginalized, or they don't have representation, or they don't feel that they identify with those who do represent them. So the only weakness really is in what we create. You know, we are JavaScript developers. We actually have a privileged position, don't we? We create the world around us. You know, people's thinking even is being changed based on what they see in front of them, what the apps they use every day. It's changing the way that people think on that level, which is immense power if you think about it. So we have that privilege. How are we going to use it? Are we going to serve and help the weakest members of our society as well? Yeah, and it's not just that as well. At some point in time, we could become disadvantaged. Our circumstances could change. We could find ourselves in a different situation that we don't face now, and it could impact how we use our services that we've built. For example, okay, hands up if you have kids here. Anybody have kids? Anybody have more than one kid? 2, keep your hands up. 3. Okay. It's hard work, isn't it? It's really difficult to navigate the internet when you're nursing a baby, because it's not just about tap sizes then, it's about how you're getting around with scrolling with your thumb, with your nose, and it can become really difficult. So isn't it great that we've got thumb sizes now that help us navigate? But see, by doing that, by building for different thumb sizes, we've also helped other users in different circumstances, right, to get around our apps and our services. And that was just a temporary thing, right? My kids are growing up a little bit now. But that was a situation I had for a little while. Not easy. Lots of nose pecking. What about if you have a broken arm or a broken leg, something that stops you from using things the way that you are used to? It becomes more difficult, doesn't it? You have to adapt. You have to change how you use something. And we might have to adapt how we use the internet as well. So now we are strong. Now we might be able. But that's maybe not always going to be the case. How awful would it be to realize too late that you could have built something that you need now in a better way? Yeah, what was I thinking? Oh yeah, so that's our second section. Sorry, I had to email my notes to me. So we are involved. We are privileged because we are developers. We can share what we know. We can really build for accessibility. But we are involved in the situation. Or if we're not now, then somebody we love might be, or know, or we might be in the future as well. Okay, so the third section, what can we do to improve access now? We can become a voice. We can speak up if we notice that there's something that could be improved. For example, so that's great work on that PR, I really loved your code, but I noticed you didn't define a focus state on that button. Perhaps we ought to do that before we merge this code, that kind of thing. And we can also raise the issue in our organization. For example, the Financial Conduct Authority has this principle that we should treat customers fairly. So that means that we should have concern about the accessibility of our sites and our apps and our products and the things that we offer to people. We can also follow these people. I'm sure I've missed a load out, right? I'm sure you know many more. But this is a couple that I like and I follow quite often, is Laura Kalbag and her book Accessibility for Everyone. Hayden Pickering, he wrote Inclusive Design Patterns, great resource for practical application. Leonie Watson, who Jam mentioned, really good. Molly Watt, and the Web AIM. And Sarah Sweden's actually holding a workshop on accessibility later this month as well. But the main thing is, I guess I want to convey to you, is that we should be concerned, that we want to build for everyone, build for the whole spectrum of human experience, and not just our own. Yeah. So accessibility it includes all of us, doesn't it? So we've seen this evening what is accessibility. So it's not a tick list, but it is an opportunity to engage our users. We've seen how it involves us in our circumstances because we have that position of shaping the world around us, what an amazing thing that is, and how we can use it to benefit everybody. And we've seen a little bit of what we can do today to help everybody to access our site. So yes, we create the future with the things that we build. Accessibility is about you and me as JavaScript developers today. It's part of what we create, and it's also our legacy. So accessibility is about us. Thank you.